Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting over Episode 2 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you'd like to watch along, start watching now. Alright, so last we left off, we were introduced to Shinji and this apparent governmental organization called NERV. Shinji was sort of strong-armed into piloting Evangelion Unit 1, which, as far as I can tell, is considered experimental at this point. And he is preparing to throw down with what is generally referred to as an angel, although it's in actuality more of like a giant monster. So, considering this is Shinji's first time piloting something like this, I'd imagine tripping and falling on your face probably isn't the worst thing that could happen. Except that in this case, he is fighting for humanity's survival, apparently. So, one of the things I think is really interesting about Evangelion is that due to the whole pilot controlling the Evangelion with their mind, whatever happens to the Evangelion, the pilot feels as though it were happening to their own body. So, the angel here snapped Unit 1's left arm, like right in the forearm, so personally, I've never broken a bone, but I don't imagine it feels very nice. Especially when it's forcibly done like that. So I think this is a nice little editing trick right here. You know, one moment we were in the thick of the combat between Unit 1 and the Angel, and it was presumably going to kill Shinji, and we smash cut to him waking up in a hospital bed. So, for better or for worse, he's survived, and apparently so has humanity. So, we kind of know that everything worked out, albeit not ideally. And judging by this scene here, I think it's pretty clear that Shinji really got the tar beaten out of him. So, now we're introduced to all these sort of shady characters. They appear to be decision makers, for want of a better term. And notably, Shinji's father is among them. So there's a lot of interesting little plot things going on here. That conversation Misato is having with Ritsuko suggests that a lot of what's going on is being hushed up and kept secret from the public. So it seems like all the members of this council, they're really grilling Shinji's dad. And they're even going as far as to sort of accuse him of nepotism because he made Shinji pilot the robot. And at least from where we're sitting in the audience, that really doesn't seem to be the case. He didn't seem like he was making Shinji get in the robot for his own good. So there's all kinds of shadowy things going on in the background that we're not really aware of just yet. There is mention of that human instrumentality project and how that should be the top priority, not mucking about with these robots and giving them to his kid. So it seems like Shinji's been unconscious for quite a while, based on the way they're talking about him. I'd imagine, he went through some fairly traumatic stuff, even though we're not privy to all of it just yet. And I think a lot of these scenes here are a nice touch, just because Unit 1 is so gigantic they have to have construction crews with these huge cranes to move all the ancillary equipment around. That and the ammunition for the weapons EVA units use is so big they're, at least based on that shot, they appear to be as tall as a person. It's crazy to think of. It's I don't even think tank shells are that big. And those were essentially small arms ammunition for an EVA rather than artillery. So we're getting a bit more about that, the family drama between Shinji and his father. So Shinji's sort of moved to Tokyo 3, but he's not going to live with his father, and instead he's going to live by himself. Misato seems to have taken matters into her own hands, for better or for worse. I guess to her credit, she's trying to do something nice, although whether or not it ends up being a good thing remains to be seen. So even the ordinary citizens, even though they live in what is ostensibly a fortress, they're not feeling too sanguine about that whole issue with the Eva and the Angel. So I guess this is a sort of demonstration of the city and how it protects its residents. It sort of descends underground and retracts. And then when it's safe, they sort of all pop back out. I don't think it's super practical, but it's pretty darn cool. So what was essentially a flat plain is now a sprawling metropolis. So to Misato's credit, she's sort of talking Shinji up a bit. You know, this is the city that you saved. Trying to, I guess, give him something to latch on to. Although it might not necessarily be enough to motivate Shinji. So Shinji is terminally awkward about what he felt was intruding on somebody else's home. But, you know, it seems like he's sort of vindicated about being a little anxious about it, considering that the only thing Misato seems to do is drink, based on all the empty liquor bottles and beer cans. Misato strikes me as the type of person who never outgrew college. It's probably the most charitable way to put it. Not a bad person, but she's not overbearing per se, but because Shinji is how he is, she sort of comes across like that. I guess it's the contrast more than anything. So, okay, well, she just sort of said, I guess that's just how you are, but, you know, she seems to be getting irritated at him for what are essentially fundamental parts of his personality. And, you know, I don't think that's really a fair thing to do on her part, especially since the living situation isn't ideal for him either. So interestingly enough, Rei is someone who comes to mind for Shinji. And to be fair, if I were in Shinji's place, that would probably be something that would stick in my mind. So, based on this glimpse we're getting at Unit 0, which we know Rei was piloting, it seems like something really hit the fan. And that was probably what led to her horrific injuries. So, based on this conversation, it really seems like nobody knows how to treat Shinji. At least Misato's upfront about not knowing how to do anything and displaying some kind of concern for him. Albeit her concern is mainly that he won't pilot the EVA again. So now we finally get to see the rest of that first fight with the Angel. It managed to puncture EVA Unit 1 straight through the head. And one would think that if it's not fatal or highly damaging to the pilot, it's definitely a very bad thing. And it appears like, for whatever reason, Unit 1 has gone offline. So sort of like that nice bit of foreshadowing in the first episode, where Unit 1 moved its hand to protect Shinji from the falling lighting rig. Unit 1 is now moving on its own. So interestingly, Shinji's father and his, I guess his, assistant, it seems like this wasn't a totally unexpected happenstance on their part. And more to the point, they're not unhappy about it. So we're sort of learning a little bit about the metaphysical stuff going on here with like AT fields and all that. Like the AT field is seemingly what protected the Angel from the bulk of the N2 mine, but it's not going to do it much good against Unit 1. I think there's also some nice foreshadowing in this scene, because Unit 1 is behaving almost animalistically. Of course, it doesn't end up destroying the Angel. Rather, the Angel decides to self-destruct and try and take Unit 1 with it. Seemingly against all odds, Unit 1 survived. And notably, everybody's getting I guess, a fresh look at the Eva. And interestingly enough, everybody seems a little bit surprised by it, except Shinju's father. So, what appeared to be the head in a previous scene looks like a mask, or rather a helmet or something like that. And what's underneath that is far more fleshy and biological. And, if I were in Shinji's place, I'd find that pretty disturbing too, so I don't blame him. Alright, well, that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one.